All right, welcome to San Diego Comic-Con 2022. We're here with the Star Wars team from Hasbro. We are with
Chris, design manager.
And Patrick, marketing director. Guten Tag.
Yeah, we are representing Germany, StarWars-Figuren.com from Volker. All right, let's get into it. First question, the Merrick's droid, the R2 SHW, was announced as a fan channel in Germany, but they can only get it on Pulse. Why is that?
That's a good question. Certainly something we'll look into. Distribution is something we're always trying to improve. I'm absolutely thrilled that it's available on Pulse. We'll touch base with our Germany local team and ask about other retailers.
Okay. Speaking of Pulse, nobody understands why there's limits put on, like, say, a trooper when they can get multiples of, like, side characters. Why is that?
Again, I can look into the specific limits. I know on some items, like our SDCC exclusive Boba Fett has a limit of 1. It's because we want to make sure that everyone gets 1 before anyone gets multiples. So obviously, also as well, we're always looking into reruns. Our goal is that every fan who wants an item or multiples of an item gets all that. That's the ideal. We never want to overproduce, but we want to meet all of that demand. And so if an additional run doesn't do that, reruns are always possible.
So it's, even though people are clamoring for multiples of troopers and stuff, it's trying to appeal to everyone, or?
Yeah, I think we're still in the middle of a global supply chain crisis, and so we're not able to ship the amount of product that we were a few years ago. And so again, it's making sure that every fan gets at least 1 if they want it.
Okay, we're going to switch to the retro line, which I'm a big fan of.
Awesome.
This retro line is amazing. I've been growing up from the 70s collecting those figures myself, and it's nice to have those.
I've been not growing up since the 70s. So.
Are you surprised as of this moment that the Bosk and Boba Fett 2-pack on Amazon hasn't sold out yet, since Boba Fett's such a iconic character?
Yeah, it's interesting pairing that with the last question. I think that item was only revealed last week. I'm trying to remember exactly when, maybe 2 weeks ago. A week is not a crazy amount of time, and so I'm glad. I think the ideal is for items to go on sale and sell out maybe a few weeks, a month, something like that, to give, again, people time to hear about it, learn that they want it. The retro items also are honestly intended for a more casual fan. Like, it's great that the established fans have gravitated to them and want to replace them, get the figures they had in their childhood, but the throwback nostalgia of them is targeted at a more casual fan who isn't going to jump on an item in a week. So again, kind of pairing with your last question, I think it's actually a good thing that it's still out there and available 1 week after it was revealed.
I know I ordered 4, so I don't know what the big problem is. I usually get multiple, especially these vintage figures. I love, the just the vintage feel of them.
Style, yeah.
Going to Amazon, sticking with Amazon. When Amazon reveals a product in the U.S., it usually goes up on a listing that day. In Germany and other Amazon sites in other countries, it takes days, maybe weeks, for it to get listed. Why is that?
It's another good question. Obviously we work globally with all of our markets. There's a lot of different markets around the world. I think that the number one thing that we're most focused on is making sure that the items get to the markets. And so, I think we've made strides in that area in the past couple of years. So making sure that those items get to Germany, get to the rest of the EU, get to Australia, wherever. If it takes a couple of days or a week, I think that's something we can live with and, again, continue to work there. But I think the important thing is making sure the items get to those markets.
Speaking of getting to customers, the pre-orders and the release time, or the filling of those pre-orders, you guys are obviously backlogged a bit.
Yep.
It's understandable with the global economy, the way it was going with COVID and stuff. They want to make sure that the release times are accurate, so that they don't backlog and then start showing up in multiple orders where people kind of space out their wallets a little. Is that going to be a problem, or is that ever going to?
Yeah, sorry. Feel free to take any of these if you want. You don't have to, though. I know.
No, this is more in your wheelhouse.
It's all good.
I'll tell you how we made it look pretty.
Yeah. Well, I know myself, like I have multiple, from the last year pre-orders with Hasbro Pulse. And I'm always joking with friends, my money goes to Hasbro Pulse, that I'm on a payment plan. Yeah. As long as things don't show up like, hey, here's multiple orders that just showed up. And
so I think before COVID, right, like it was a pretty well-oiled machine, and we released a product, we knew when it was going to show up on shelf, and it largely showed up on shelf then. I mean, again, I think we can't underestimate the size of the global supply chain crisis that we're in. And again, I think we've made strides there in the past couple of years. Right when it hit, we stuck with kind of the dates we were targeting for. If an item ultimately arrives after those dates, pre-orders get canceled, and that's a really negative experience for the community. And so basically, we can't pinpoint it the same way we used to because, again, we're in the middle of a crisis. There's now a larger range. We have learned to err on the worst case scenario side of that range to make sure pre-orders don't get canceled. What that means is that, like with our Obi-Wan waves, some items are going to show up earlier than we expected because there's a larger window of time now. I think that's a preferable situation than the reverse, where items show up after the date that we put out there and then pre-orders get canceled.
Okay, that sounds right. Okay, the last two HasLabs didn't go according to plan. I know I banked the Rancor. I backed the Rancor. Do you think people are maybe overwhelmed with pre-orders since there's so many of them? I mean, I know I branch out. I do as much as all four collectibles like Marvel and G.I. Joe and Transformers occasionally. Do you think it's maybe overwhelmed the community?
Well, I mean, I know personally, I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff happening. So, I mean, how much that plays into an individual campaign, I'm not sure. But, I mean, I think it's an amazing time to have so many choices. So, and the HasLab programs are around fans being able to express their desire or not for an object. And if it doesn't fund, I mean, that's fans telling us that. So, I think it's working well.
Yeah, and we're going to own this situation, right? We just saw G.I. Joe HasLab get back in record time, so I think the HasLab model is still strong and working. Our past two Star Wars HasLabs haven't been what fans wanted in that particular configuration with that particular price point, but Star Wars started HasLab 4 years ago, and we are absolutely going to come back strong, and I see a bright future ahead for Star Wars HasLab.
I know there's always a big demand for vintage, TVC HasLab-backed projects. Do you think maybe you'll take a turn with that again? Or?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Barge started HasLab. It exceeded the threshold by 3,000. Razor Crest at that point set a new record, so we've had a great run with vintage HasLabs. They're definitely in the mix for the future.
Okay. What happened to the Hasbro Q&A video chat? I guess it used to have a video chat with Hasbro, or...
So I think we've done fan site interviews. I think we still continue to do those. We did the last one, I believe, in February, but we've been doing live interviews since then. So we usually do about 4 of those a year. We did a virtual one in February, then we were at Celebration. Now we're here, and I think we'll probably see one more virtual one by the end of the year.
Okay. Unpunched vintage cars were shown here at San Diego Comic-Con. Is that going to be something that's put into the main line, or is that just for the show here at San Diego?
I can take it if you want.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so the ones that are being shown here are vintage cards that are within outer box packaging. So this is a perfect example right here. This retro item, because the card backs are inside, they can be unpunched. The challenge in mainline is honestly if they're unpunched and then they get put on pegs. We see those things then get punched out and kind of litter the stores. Also, when they're put on the pegs, sometimes they're not perforated correctly. It damages the card backs, which is not a great experience for consumers either. So moving forward, we can't make any promises, but we will continue to strive for card backs within outer packaging to be unpunched, and then mainline will continue to be punched.
Okay. I want to thank you guys for taking the time to talk with us.
Absolutely.
And the Germany audience out there. So thank you.